We're diving into a topic today that I think secretly sabotages the success of some of the most talented people we know.
Hmm.
Destructive perfectionism. I
Right.
mean, think about that designer from the source material, Mina. She's
Yeah.
brilliant, real.
Absolutely brilliant.
But every single project has to be this masterpiece.
Yeah.
She'll spend, 8 hours on the shade of gray in a footer, miss a huge deadline, and then even when she gets all this praise, she's still convinced it's terrible.
It's a classic case.
So if you, like Mina, are tired of that anxiety, that feeling like nothing you do is ever enough, this deep dive is for you. Our mission is to really uncover the deep psychological roots of this and find some actual steps to, let go.
And to start, we really have to define what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Because true perfectionism isn't just striving for excellence.
No.
It's a defensive strategy.
Yeah.
The sources define it as this constant drive to meet extremely high and, this is the key word, unrealistic standards.
It's unreal.
And the fuel for that drive, it's not a love of quality. It's the fear of mistakes, fear of failure, or the fear of what other people will think.
So it's not about achieving more, it's about minimizing the threat of being seen as flawed.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's an avoidance strategy that just happens to be disguised as ambition.
Wow.
The core belief, the tragedy of it really, is that their worthiness, their right to be accepted, only exists when they're flawless.
Which is impossible.
Totally impossible for any human being.
Yeah.
So they're trapped, just constantly anxious, chasing a finish line that doesn't even exist.
Okay, let's unpack this then. If it's all rooted in fear,
Yeah.
how does that actually show up? I mean, it's not just about having a super neat desk.
No, not at all, though that can be a symptom. The source material is fantastic here. It breaks it down into 3 distinct psychological types.
Okay.
It really helps you pinpoint where your anxiety is coming from.
Okay.
So first, there's self-oriented perfectionism.
Right, the inner tyrant.
Exactly. That's your personal rigid standard. The relentless punishing voice inside your own head that says, I must be the best at everything, and if I'm not, I'm a complete failure.
That's the one that leads straight to burnout. But what about when that pressure feels like it's coming from outside?
Well, that brings us to the second type, other-oriented perfectionism.
Ah, so you project it outwards.
You do. You expect flawlessness from everyone else, your partner, your colleagues, your kids. You hold them to the same impossible standards you hold yourself to.
That sounds like a recipe for very tense relationship.
It is a guaranteed recipe. You
Yeah.
become unable to forgive just small human errors.
And the third type, that one really taps into this modern feeling of being constantly watched, constantly evaluated.
It really does. It's called socially prescribed perfectionism. This is that feeling that you have to meet all these external expectations.
From who? Society. Your parents.
All of the above. Parents, your boss, culture, social media. The thought process is basically, others expect me to be perfect, and if I drop the ball, I'll be rejected.
Understanding where the pressure comes from is huge. But let's talk symptoms, because the warning signs are not what you'd expect.
Right.
You'd think a perfectionist would be incredibly productive, but the sources point to things like procrastination.
Which seems so backward, doesn't it?
It does. Why would someone who's obsessed with a perfect result put off starting?
Because the starting line is also the failure line. If you don't start, you can't fail. Not yet, anyway.
Ah,
So the perfectionist puts off writing that first sentence or making that first call because of the sheer terror that it won't be flawless from the get-go.
that makes so much sense, and that ties right into what the sources call marginal focus. We saw that with Mina.
Yes, the classic pitfall. Marginal focus is that obsession with tiny, unimportant
It
details.
was font kerning.
The font kerning, the exact hex code of a button nobody will see. She's focused on the 1%, while the 99%, the main deliverable, just languishes. It's a defense mechanism, really. If I can control this one tiny, irrelevant thing, maybe I can control the outcome of this whole scary project.
And then there's the emotional fallout at the end, the lack of satisfaction. They land the big client, they finish the project, and they feel nothing.
They feel empty. Because the motivation was never joy or curiosity. It was just avoiding judgment.
Yeah.
Once that thread is gone, the anxiety doesn't just magically turn into relief or happiness.
It just finds a new target.
It moves immediately to the next looming fear. The journey is joyless because the focus is only on that final result, which of course is never good enough anyway.
So if this is all a fear-based defense shield, we have to ask where it comes from. What's the origin of this terror of being imperfect?
For that, we really have to go back to early psychological roots, especially attachment theory. The sources draw a very clear line here.
Okay.
Individuals who were raised in high-control environments or places where praise was, conditional.
Conditional.
Yeah. You only got praise for a perfect score, for winning. Those kids often internalize this really damaging core belief. Love equals perfect performance.
Wow.
Just think what that does to a child's mind. Flawlessness becomes their only shield against the fear of rejection. If I'm perfect, I can't be criticized. If I can't be criticized, I can't be rejected. Therefore, I'm safe.
That's a heavy burden for a kid. And the research connects this directly to anxious attachment styles in adults, right?
It does, very directly. Anxious attachment means that as an adult, you're constantly seeking validation, always scanning your partner or your boss for any tiny sign of disapproval.
You're waiting for them to abandon you.
Exactly.
No.
And perfectionism becomes the perfect tool to prevent that. If I perform perfectly, if I look perfect, I minimize any chance you'll have to find a reason to leave me. It makes getting validation a matter of survival.
And the sources are clear that this doesn't always come from a place of cruelty. Sometimes it's subtle, it's hidden in the way we praise people.
Yes, this is so important.
It's the difference between saying, great job, you came in first, versus
Versus saying, I loved watching how hard you concentrated on that.
you're praising process over outcome.
Exactly. When we only praise the outcome, we send that hidden message. If you're not perfect, your effort didn't count. You're not as lovable. The sources argue that if we can just teach people to value effort and resilience, the cycle could stop right there.
And what are the mental health stakes here?
They're very high. The studies are clear. Holding on to those rigid standards leads to chronic feelings of inadequacy and almost always burnout. Your brain never gets to rest.
Because the threat is always there.
Always. And therapists often say that for high achievers, that constant feeling of not being enough, even when they're successful on paper, is one of the earliest signs of hidden depression. The person who looks like they have it all together is often fighting the hardest battle inside.
That's a staggering thought. And that internal pain, it doesn't just stay inside, does it? It spills out into their relationships.
It absolutely does.
Mhm.
Perfectionists really struggle with deep closeness
Yeah.
because they create emotional distance
They're hiding.
constantly,
Yeah.
masking their real selves. They're terrified that if you see their flaws, you'll judge them and reject them.
Yeah.
And you just can't build true intimacy if you're always hiding.
And since they're so hard on themselves, they must project that onto their partners, too.
Oh, completely. They
Mhm.
place these unrealistic demands on the people closest to them, pointing out every little error, creating this environment where their partner just feels constantly judged.
He must be exhausting.
It is. It's exhausting to be in that kind of relationship.
This brings up a really important distinction the sources make between healthy and unhealthy perfectionism. Because trying to do well isn't a bad thing.
Not at all. And what's fascinating is the difference comes down to one thing: the emotional motivation.
Why?
Healthy perfectionism is about striving for growth, for mastery. It's motivated by curiosity. It accepts that mistakes are part of the process. They're just data.
And unhealthy.
Unhealthy perfectionism is fueled by harsh self-criticism. It demands flawlessness, and it's driven entirely by avoiding a negative outcome. And it applies that unforgiving standard to everyone.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me because it feels like modern life is almost designed to reward the unhealthy kind.
It really is. The sources point straight at organizational culture. So many workplaces are built on systems that reward only flawless performance and competition.
It just fuels that socially prescribed perfectionism we mentioned.
It does. And you add the always online culture on top of that. This pressure to be constantly available, constantly working, it reinforces the idea that rest is laziness.
If you take a break, you're falling behind.
You're risking your entire career. But of course, the biggest driver of all this is digital media.
Oh, for sure. Social media.
Yeah. We are just bombarded with these edited, curated, perfect performances of other people's lives. On Instagram, on LinkedIn.
Your highlight reel.
Exactly. And we compare our messy, complicated, real lives to these filtered images, and we just feel dull, inadequate.
So what's the way out?
The only way out, according to this material, is to learn how to consciously turn off the comparison. You have to separate their performance from your reality. The second you feel that inadequacy creeping in, you have to remind yourself you're comparing your whole life to their marketing campaign.
Let's bring it back to a designer, Mina. She broke the cycle. She learned to choose good enough over perfect.
Yes.
And the really powerful insight there was that her best work, her actual quality, came from a place of calm, not anxiety. So what are the concrete steps someone listening can take to start breaking this fear cycle?
The whole strategy is basically a form of behavioral therapy. You have to prove to your subconscious that mistakes are not the catastrophe it thinks they are.
You need evidence.
You need evidence.
Yeah.
And you get that by introducing small, deliberate errors.
Hmm.
The sources suggest starting with a daily journal for accepting mistakes.
Okay.
Every day, you write down 3 valuable mistakes you made, not what you did right. You focus on what you learned from the error. It reframes mistakes as data, not as failures of character.
I love that. And then there's intentional practice, which sounds terrifying. Deliberately doing something imperfectly.
It does sound terrifying, but you start small. You have to.
Yeah.
Maybe you send an internal email that you know has a typo.
Ooh.
Or you deliberately leave your bed unmade for a day. Or post something online without editing it 20 times. The point is to notice the catastrophic thought. Everyone will think I'm a mess, and then notice the actual result.
Which is nothing happened.
And nothing happens, and that creates a little crag in the perfectionist's rigid rules.
The sources have that whole 7-day break-free plan. Let's talk about a couple of those days.
Yeah, day 3 is a good one. It involves mistake acceptance meditation.
What does that entail?
You literally just sit and repeat an affirmation like, mistakes are part of my growth, I am safe, even when I'm imperfect. It's a direct assault on that conditional love trap.
And day 5 is the rational audit. I thought this was so powerful.
It's critical.
Yeah.
You actually list your most rigid, unrealistic standards. The rules you live by: I must answer every email within 10 minutes. My house must always be spotless before guests come over.
And then
And then, next to each one, you ask the question, is this rule really necessary? And what is the cost of keeping it? It forces you to see the enormous amount of energy these arbitrary rules are draining from you.
it makes you realize you're the one who made the rules in the first place. You can unmake them.
Exactly.
So to bring it all together,
You know, the emotional core we've uncovered is that perfectionism looks like strength. It looks like dedication. But as we've seen, it's really just a shadow. It's a shadow of internal fear, fear of not being seen, fear of judgment.
and letting go isn't about mediocrity.
Not at all. It isn't about inviting chaos. It's simply about accepting the messy, beautiful learning process of being human.
This information, it really gives us permission to stop chasing an impossible ideal. You know, you weren't born to be perfect. You're born to become more human, kinder, and freer. There's this one quote from the sources that just sums it all up. Perfection is loving yourself with all your flaws.
So what does this all mean for you as you're listening? It really brings up an important question to sit with.
Yeah.
Have you ever chased perfection so hard in one area of your life that you completely forgot to experience living in all the others?
Yeah.
That's something to mull over as you move forward.